Golden Hour by Kacey Musgraves, in addition to being just a beautiful song, is a great intermediate song to learn if you want to improve your right hand accuracy and learn some really cool non-standard chords. Let's take it apart. And of course, if you want to follow along on the sheet music, you can get that in both tablature and standard notation at the link in the description. We're in the key of E major here, but because we have a capo on the 2nd fret, it's going to feel like we are in D major. So as always with a capo, we're naming the chords based on the shape that we're playing rather than the actual pitch of the chord. Speaking of chords, this song has a whopping 17 chords. And I know that's a lot, I know that might be intimidating, but hear me out. You're going to have 2 challenges in this song. Remembering all the chords and accurately executing the strumming pattern, which we'll get to in a second. As far as the chords go, most of them are pretty easy to play. Some of them are extremely easy to play, like this guy. So the chords are really a mental challenge rather than a physical challenge, and the arrangement of the song makes it easier than it seems like it would be to remember 17 chords. And there aren't that many other challenging things about the song. The form is pretty straightforward. The strumming pattern, though difficult to play perfectly, does stay the same for pretty much the whole song. There aren't a ton of dynamics or tempo shifts. So that's all to say, don't let the number of chords scare you off. It's still a very playable song for most intermediate players. And here are all 17 chords. E minor 9, F sharp minor 7, D major 7, D dominant 7, otherwise known as simply D7, D7 sus 2, A7 sus 2, A major, G major 7, A7, B minor, B flat augmented, D over A, D flat 5 over A flat, A minor over C, G major, G minor over B flat, and G minor. The strumming pattern that I mentioned earlier is down, 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 up, down. That's root note, and then the rest of the strums are all on the highest 3 strings. Down, 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 up, down. And actually on that up strum, you don't have to worry about hitting all 3 strings. As long as you get 1 or 2 of them in there, you're fine. So with counting, that would be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 E and. So you can probably see why I said that strumming pattern is difficult, right? It's really just a matter of hitting the right strings and not hitting any of the wrong strings. If you watch the playthrough video, which I'll link to up here and in the description, you'll hear I make a few mistakes in there because it's just so hard to play this thing perfectly from start to finish. So do the best you can with it. Don't get too stressed out about being perfect with the strumming. The good news is that aside from the bridge where we just strum each chord once and let it ring, that strumming pattern happens throughout the entire song. So yes, it's difficult, but at least it's the only one you have to learn. And one last thing about the strumming before we jump into the song, we're in 16th note swing here. So make sure you have that swing feel going on. It should be 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and, not 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and. The intro is 4 measures long and alternates between E minor 9 and F sharp minor 7. So E, F sharp, E, F sharp. On the 4th measure, instead of doing our normal strumming pattern, we just strum once and let that chord ring for the rest of the measure. Now because that 4th measure is just 1 strum, we're only strumming the high 3 strings, we're not hitting the low E string. Even so, you still want to fret that low E string, because if you don't, the open E from the previous chord will continue to ring and will clash with your F sharp chord. So here's the intro. Next is the verse, which starts out with 2 measures of that same E minor 9 chord, and then moves to D major 7 for 2 measures. Then we repeat that whole sequence one more time, except this time we play the D major 7 for just 1 measure, and then we do 1 measure of D7. And this measure right here, the D7 measure, is the one thing that's different between the first and second verses. First verse, we just play the D7. Second verse, we lift up our third finger on the and of 2, which is the second strum of the high strings, and the chord changes to D7 sus 2 for the rest of the measure. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 E and. Then we go to this A7 sus 2 for 1 measure, and then at the beginning of the next measure, we don't do any strums, we just do a hammer on to the second fret of the G and B strings. This, along with the open A and high E strings that are still ringing, gives us an A major chord. This is the end of the verse, and just like at the end of the intro, we hold this chord for the full measure, no strumming. So I'm going to demo the first verse here. That brings us to the chorus, and just a heads up, the chorus is played 3 times in this song, and each time it's a little different. So we're going to learn the first chorus, and then we'll go over what's different about the second and third choruses. The first 3 measures of the chorus are the same as the intro. And this is actually a really common songwriting tactic. You harvest a bit of material from one of the main sections, like a verse or a chorus, and use that as the intro, because it makes a lot more sense for the intro to have a tie-in to the rest of the song, rather than being something totally different that you never end up hearing again. That way the intro truly is introducing you to what's coming up. On the 4th measure though, instead of just doing 1 strum on our F sharp minor 7 chord, we do a full strumming pattern on that chord. Then we have 1 measure of G major 7, full strumming pattern on all these chords, 1 measure of A7, 1 measure of D major 7, back to G major 7 for another measure, and then finally we end with a single strum on D major 7. So like I said, that's the first chorus. In the second chorus, instead of ending on our single strum of D major 7, we have 2 full strumming patterns on D major 7. And this is the only time in the whole song that we don't have a single strum measure at the end of a section. The third chorus is the last section of the song, and it's kind of a double chorus, but it's not quite as simple as just playing the chorus twice in a row. So the first 8 measures are exactly the same as they are in the first 2 choruses. So E minor 9, F sharp minor 7, E minor 9, F sharp minor 7, G major 7, A7, D major 7, G major 7. But then instead of going to D major 7 like the first 2 choruses do, we repeat those first 8 measures. After playing those 8 measures again, then we get our D major 7, but instead of ending right there, we go back and forth between 1 measure of D major 7 and 1 measure of G major 7 a couple times, then end on a single strum of D major 7. So to recap the third chorus, we have the normal first 8 measures twice, then D major 7, G major 7, D major 7, G major 7, then a single strum of D major 7, and that's the end of the song. Now I'm only going to demo the first chorus in this lesson. If you want to see me do all 3 choruses, you can check out the aforementioned playthrough video, which again is linked in the description. And that just leaves the bridge, which means we have 8 new chords to learn. But don't worry, each one of these chords is played on just 3 strings, so they're all pretty easy to play. And again, Each chord is just one single strum, so you're not going to have to learn any new strumming patterns. The first 4 chords are each held for 2 beats, and those chords are B minor, B flat augmented, D over A, and D flat 5 over A flat. Those are some fancy sounding names, I know, but what's going on here is actually really straightforward. So she starts on B minor, and then with each successive chord, she just moves the note on the G string down 1 fret at a time. And that's the kind of thing where when you're writing a song, you come up with this really simple idea like, it'd be cool if I just move this note down. And then when people like me are trying to name the chords, it ends up sounding way more complicated than it actually is. The next 3 chords are each held for 1 full measure, and they are A minor over C, G major, and G minor over B flat. And this is the only spot in the song where we get any kind of meaningful divergence from the key with this A minor to G sequence, which temporarily makes it sound like we're in the key of G major. But then immediately we take another left turn by moving to the G minor chord in the next measure, so it can't really be called a key change, we're just kind of flirting with another key. And this is exactly the kind of thing you want the bridge to do. You want it to serve as a break in the monotony of verse, chorus, so that when you come out of it, it's satisfying because you're returning to your old friend, the verse or the chorus. The last chord is just a revoicing of the G minor chord to root position, and in keeping with this tradition of letting the last chord in each section hang, this one is held for 2 full measures. The thing that stands out the most to me about this song is just how few basic triads there are, meaning just regular major or minor chords. In fact, if you don't count the bridge, there's only one of those, and that's the A major at the end of the verse. Every other chord in the intro, verse, and chorus is either a 7th chord or a 9th chord. And then in the bridge, you have an augmented chord and a flat 5 chord. That kind of rich harmony is not something you expect to see in a country song. And it's why, even though I know Kacey Musgraves is generally considered to be at least country adjacent, I really don't think of her as a country artist. I think of her as a pop artist with a little bit of country flavor. Another interesting thing is that convention she establishes of letting the last chord of each section ring out. What that does is act as kind of a signal to the listener that something new is about to happen. It's a little detail in the songwriting, but it goes a long way toward giving the song shape and making it more easily digestible even upon first listen. And finally, I just want to touch on the strumming pattern real quick. It's such an unusual pattern. I've never seen it in all of the hundreds of songs I've learned, so it's worth mentioning. The fact that almost all the strums are on upbeats gives this really light, airy feel to the song, which I think fits the subject matter really well, and that's just next level songwriting when you can actually match the strumming pattern to the subject matter of the song. As I mentioned earlier, if you want to see a full playthrough of the song with tab and everything, there's a link to that in the description. And remember, if you found this lesson helpful, I'd really appreciate it if you could give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. And that's it for the video. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.